Today we're talking about umbilical cords. God, I don't know if the YouTube algorithm is necessarily going to like that. What's going on, you guys? It's your huggable hipster here for another episode of Soulsborne Academy. Don't mind the hunter in the corner, they're just here for your protection. And today we're going to be talking about umbilical cords, a nifty little consumable item that you can obtain in Bloodborne. There are 4 of these bad boys that you can obtain in Bloodborne in order to get the true ending. The final true boss is Moon Presence, and you only get to defeat Moon Presence if you have defeated Father Gehrman previously. Once you defeat Father Gehrman, all is said and done with that boss, which Father Gehrman is pretty easy. If you also know parrying, he is especially easier. Once Father Gascoigne is taken care of, you will then fight the Moon Presence, which is a pretty epic boss and pretty easy to take out, if I don't mind my saying so. After fighting Father Gehrman, and once that boss is done, you will then go into fighting Moon Presence, which that boss is as hard as you make it. Let's just put it that way. And now, yay, you've defeated Moon Presence. Yay, clippity clappity, hippity hoppity, all is good with the world. Childhood's Beginning is the achievement that is unlocked for this, and you essentially become a great one. Now they will be up on the screen for you guys to read them along with me, but these are all the 3rd umbilical cords and where you can obtain them. And these are also in no particular order. Murgo's cord, which every great one loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. This cord granted Mensis audience with Murgo, but resulted in the stillbirth of their brains. Workshop's cord. Every great one loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. The 3rd umbilical cord precipitated the encounter with the pale moon, which beckoned the hunters and conceived the hunter's dream. Ariana's cord. Every great one loses its child, then yearns for a surrogate, and Odin, the formless great one, is no different. To think it was corrupted blood that began this eldritch liaison. Lasefka's cord. Provost Willem sought the cord in order to elevate his being and thoughts into those of a great one, by lining his brain with eyes the only choice he knew if man were to ever match their greatness. Now Murgo's cord, of course, can only be obtained after fighting Murgo's wet nurse. The workshop cord can only be obtained by going into the alternate version of the hunter's workshop. In order to get Ariana's umbilical cord, the only way to get it is if you send her to Odin's chapel. Lasefka's cord can only be obtained after you have fought Rom the Vacuous Spider. If you try to defeat Lasefka in order to get the cord before beating Rom, then you'll just kill Lasefka and you won't obtain the cord at all. You'll basically kill a doppelganger of Lasefka. But as long as you beat Rom the Vacuous Spider first and then go obtain the cord, then you will be just fine. Now, getting more into the philosophy and psychology of what the umbilical cords could possibly represent, it's more of a psychological reference to life and what it can bring to the overarching ecosystem rather, that is Bloodborne. There's this very interesting subplot that's going on within Bloodborne of where the great ones can't have their own children, they have to have a surrogate, and if they try to have their own children, they normally die. And the really twisted side of this is that the umbilical cords were used in order to elevate the thought, elevate the insight, elevate one's being to that of a great one. This is also why when you consume the umbilical cords in Bloodborne, you obtain 3 insight. You don't have to eat all 3 of them, you have to at least consume 3 for the final ending, but you don't have to have all of them if you don't want to. You can have 1 here, 1 there, just as a little sweet treat. Now there is folklore about the umbilical cord, which historically the umbilical cord was dried and kept as an amulet, which was believed to protect and bring good fortune. Now, this is something I really want to discuss with other loreheads, not just in the comments, but I might actually hit up a few of my lorehead friends about this. The loss of why the great ones lose their children is not fully explained in Bloodborne, which I wish that it were. Some suggest that it's the consequence of their existence, which is why they can't have children, because they are on a higher plane of reality. Because in essence, they would then be unable to coexist with their physical child, because they are in a sense pure thought. They are not of physical form, even though we saw Cause, like she was a physical being who tried to give birth to her child, Orphan of Cause. The poor child. The poor child doesn't even have a name. It's just Orphan. It's not Mike. It's not Samuel. There's no Timothy. It's just, hey, what's going on there, Orphan? And it's interesting because since they are not infertile, they can impregnate human beings, which I thought was an interesting thing because they kind of have like a hybrid offspring of sorts that happens there, because you have the physical child, but you also have that child who has the DNA of the Great One. This is a concept that we not only see, by the way, in Bloodborne, we also see this in Death Stranding, and we also see it in Silent Hill 4: The Room. When it comes to Bloodborne, and when it comes to the psychology of what the umbilical cord itself represents, it's more or less a sustenance, a way of maintaining the fact and the idea that life is still present, even though you are in this kind of waking versus dream state, and you also have this nightmare realm that's present in the game. This is the reminder that there is a life, that there is something that is tangible other than the nightmare that is currently happening. Because anytime that there is an umbilical cord present, it is always this indication of life, of sustenance, of something that is attached to another person, of that transition between life and death, that in between, that little kind of, not purgatory, but that in-between place of the unknown, that is just that kind of, that middle ground, if you will. The umbilical cord is meant to represent a connection to a mother, a connection to life, a connection to being, a connection from the person to their main goal. It's used as a connective device and a way to nurture a story, a person, a being. I'm utilizing the philosophical context more so than the literal context, so bear with me. The umbilical cord in Bloodborne's sense, when it comes to the final boss, with consuming all 4 or maybe just 3 umbilical cords, whatever your fancy, is meant to signify that you are ready for that next step of ascension without possibly even realizing it. I mean, I know that there are probably some players out there who ingested the umbilical cords to gain insight, and then when you're fighting Gehrman and then you realize, oh shit, there's another boss after this entirely, and you beat him, and then you turn to this worm thing, and then you realize, I ascended? Maybe? That's when you realize the story has a little more to it than you thought originally. And that's the cool part about Bloodborne, is that there's so much to it, there's so much meat, and there's so much heft in the lore department that whenever I turned into this squiggly little worm thing, I was questioning things for a little bit there. The thing is that when we look at the umbilical cords and when we ingest all of them to get to the final boss, we are basically going one-on-one with an ascended being. So think about it this way, right? We ingest all the umbilical cords, we take on moon presence, we are taking on an ascended being, and then we're fighting a thing that ascended to a greater plane of thought in order to become that next greater plane of thought, which again, this is a work in progress going, so work with me as I work through this myself. There's so much there to unpack. Like, I need more than one person to discuss this. Yes, we understand the base theory that, you know, this is what happens when you eat umbilical cords. You know, you unlock an ascended being called the moon presence, and then you become an ascended squiggly thing that will become the next moon presence. Yes, we understand that. But what does that actually mean for existence? What does that mean for the nightmare? What does that mean for everything else combined? What does that mean in essence for the hunters who are fighting the beast? Does that mean the beast's plague is cured and that, you know, the Bergenworth doesn't have anything left to search for? What does being awake then mean? Because if you're looking at the first ending, then you're awake. You're not in the dream realm anymore with Gehrman and the doll. You just, you know, he doesn't unalive you, he alives you, okay? But then in the second ending, we become Gehrman. We become the next guardian of the dream. And then the third ending, we just ascend, you know? So it's something that, it's a cool conversation to go through, because by the time you get to the third ending, you've ingested all of these umbilical cords for a higher plane of thought, because these were umbilical cords that were from, you know, greater one's children. So in order to obtain a greater thought, you had to obtain a greater being. Like, you had to ingest greater beings. Like, all of this is just so, it's a lot. So yes, comments, questions down below. We'll discuss it in the comments section. I really enjoy these conversations, as as out there sometimes as they might be, as convoluted sometimes as they might get, because ideas can overlap sometimes, you know. But that's what Soulsborne Academy is for, you know. It's for these types of discussions where we get to go in deep to something we might not understand it at first, but we'll come out still possibly not understanding it, but understanding it. But that's it for today's video. If you guys like my face and what I do, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell down below. May you find your worth in the waking world, your hunter, and I will see you all in the next one. Umbasa.